Alright, welcome to the very last workshop of vhHacks 2021. Today, we're going to be talking about hacking the hackathon presentation, how to show off your project and stand out from the crowd, and how to give a great hackathon demo and pitch. So, let's dive straight into it. So today for our syllabus for our workshop content, it'll go a bit like this. We'll talk about two main topics, that is our content and our presentation. For our content, I'm going to be going over three main ideas, which is solving a problem, showing off your project, and MVPs, minimum viable products, and future work. And for presentation, I will talk a little bit about delivery, about pacing, and about presenting for camera, because this year vhHacks 2021 is taking place online, and so I'll just give a couple of tips and pointers on how to make a more engaging presentation for camera. So let's dive straight into content then. So the first thing that we want to think about when we're doing a presentation is problem solving. Typically, the most effective way to structure a hackathon is through problem solving. And what this means is that we want to present the problem and then describe how our project solves it. For example, let's talk about a hackathon project I made a few years ago on the topic of sustainability. First, we needed to identify a problem. In this case, we focus on the topic of food waste. We realized that the tons of food end up in landfills every year, right? And at this point, it could be good to insert a brief statistic here as well, like a certain percentage or whatever. Be short on it, don't take too long. And then more importantly, we want to identify a cause that your problem or that your project will solve. So in this case, our cause is extra food in the fridge goes bad or becomes leftover, and then people don't know how to use it, and therefore they throw it away, and that food ends up in landfills. And that's not really great for sustainability, correct? And so now, once we've identified this problem, we want to solve the problem with our hack, right? So in this case, it would be something like, our project uses computer vision to scan the contents of your fridge and provides recipes based on its contents. This allows users to more effectively use their leftover food and the remaining groceries before they go out and shop for more, which reduces the amount of food waste that we have overall. Right? And that's great. Like, that is essentially how our project is supposed to fix the problem that we just identified. And here we can show off exactly the solution that directly addresses the previous problem that we previously presented. So in this case, again, this makes it easier for the end user to use up any spare groceries in their fridges rather than letting it go to waste, right? And so that is the solution that directly addresses the cause of the problem that we previously presented. This makes it very clear for any judge or anybody watching to understand what your project is about and what it's trying to do, right? So next, let's talk about the demo. So over this weekend, we've spent 48 hours making a project. So now it's time to show it off. Demoing your project is probably one of the most important parts of a hackathon presentation, because you got to show off exactly what you made, how you made it, and yeah, just show off what you made to the world. So a good hackathon demo walks the viewer through all of the app's user stories. So for those who don't know what those are, a user story is a single specific action that a user can achieve through the app, right? It's not necessarily the main focus of the application. A user story could just be logging into the application, or referring to the previous hack on sustainability, it would be taking a photo of the fridge and getting a list of the foods inside, right? A user story is any action that a user can take that goes from an action and leads to an end result. You don't need to make these user stories explicit when you're presenting, but rather just make sure you walk through as many of the user stories as you can within your given time frame. Next, we want to focus on problem solving. So last slide we talked about problem solving, and now in our demo we want to show off how our app or our project does this. Right? And so this will be the main user story of your application, right? And we want to prioritize this demonstration over demonstrations of other user stories if we have like a set time limit. You want to focus on showing exactly how your project solves the problem that you presented previously. And then lastly, you want to show off the technology, right? We've learned so many new tools over this hackathon. You might have worked with some APIs, you might have found a new language, anything. If you've built your application with cool APIs or tools, show them off during your demo. Right? So for example, if you use Firebase for authentication and database management, show that off. Talk about how that works. If you use Google Cloud Vision for image recognition and machine learning, show that off. For example, maybe you use Twilio for some text messaging stuff. Show all of that off, right? Because these are cool pieces of technology that, one, like, it's just really cool to see in your hack, and two, it's really great to like show what you've learned as well, right? So again, APIs, tools, small features, all of that. Now, lastly, in terms of content, let's talk about the minimum viable product and showing the future of your project. Your project is so much more than just the demo, right? The idea that you had at the hackathon this weekend is so much more than just that. It's usually much broader scope, like general idea, and there's usually a lot of potential that just couldn't be reached because of the short time frame of a hackathon. Like, it's not like, oh, we need to have a finished, polished product by the end of it. We're trying to create what's called a minimum viable product, which is just the very bare bones that gets the job done, right? So what you've currently made is most likely a minimum viable product, which is the most basic iteration of a project that achieves its purpose or idea, right? So your demo still should have worked. It still should have went well, but this is what we call a first draft, right? So for Footprints, or the sustainability app that I previously mentioned, it was a first draft application because it was a desktop app and it had a badge UI and everything was like sort of just thrown in there as a prototype to just show how it could work. It was mostly focused on the back end. So very much so just a prototype, right? And so because of this, we want to be able to talk about the future. We want to talk about what a polished version of our project looks like, right? So for example, the sustainability app we worked on previously would look like a mobile app, ideally, that can easily scan a picture of any ingredient and produce recipes based on it, right? That was our main idea. Or it could be an IoT, like smart home appliance app that gets installed in smart fridges with cameras that can just do all of this for you, right? An idea similar to that. We want to talk about what the impacts of our project are. So again, for sustainability project, which we'll be referring to for examples, that would be like, it would allow people to more easily consume leftover foods that they have in their fridge. It would help tons of people find new meals and be more conscious about what they're throwing away and all of that stuff, and so on and so forth. You want to list off exactly what this project does and like why it's important that this project exists. And then lastly, what do you hope to change about your project, right? So again, we don't expect you to have a finished, polished product. We very much so expect just a prototype, something that works. It could look good, it could look great, but mostly just something that works, and obviously not something that is like 100% perfect, polished, publishable, right? So again, for the sustainability app, it is currently a desktop app with a very ugly swing GUI. And so we would hope to change the platform, we would hope to change the UI, perhaps get better tools and more long-lasting tools. So like perhaps not using Google Cloud Vision and using our own thing, perhaps getting a better recipe generating API, so on and so forth. Lots of other changes we can make to the app, and we want to all talk about that here, right? Talking about the future. And so this sort of acts as a wrap-up and as a conclusion for your product, right? And so in essence, what the conclusion and like talk about the future part of your presentation would be just, why should we care? Talk about the impacts, the potential, and why this product or project is exciting for us, right? So that is generally what we want to think about when we're doing content for our presentations. So now let's talk about the presentation itself. So just a quick note here, vhHacks judging will not be based on the presentation quality, but it will be based more on the actual project and the content itself. With that being said though, good presentation skills still will help your project stand out, and these skills can also be applied to other events or other things overall, so stay tuned. So first let's talk about delivery. So there's a lot of good rules for content delivery, but the first one is always be confident, right? You always want to seem intentional with what you're saying, even if you aren't 100% sure something will work or you aren't exactly sure what the idea is. Be confident, deliver it in a voice that is convincing and makes people believe what you're trying to say, right? Next, you always want to have a steady delivery of material, so make sure you pace yourself and try to speak clearly and concisely. Use good language and don't speak too fast. Make sure you can take breaks to think, know what you're going to say, and then say it. And that way, when you're presenting, it'll flow much better. Right? In live hackathon demos, we want to try to make good eye contact with all of our judges. This helps them feel engaged, and it helps them feel more like you're talking to them instead of just presenting to the crowd. Of course, don't constantly stare them in the eyes. Don't just be like, "Oh, hi," and like lock eyes with them. That would be kind of weird, but overall, just make sure to consistently look and speak to the judges about your presentation, and make sure you're talking to them directly, right? Of course, this year is a bit different, but we can apply the same idea to the camera. Just make sure you look up, look into the lens as often as you can, and make sure you're sort of creating that eye contact feeling, even though we are doing it virtually this year. Wear a smile. Smiles are great. If you talk when you're smiling, you can even hear the difference. It just makes everything sound a little bit more exciting, a little bit more upbeat, and a little bit more enticing, right? So it helps with seeming more confident when you're presenting, and also smiles are contagious. So if you see someone else smiling, you're more inclined to smile as well. And so the judges will also be like, wow, these people are really excited. This is a very exciting project, and I'm going to be happy with them. And lastly, be proud of your project. You absolutely should be proud of your project. You created something in 48 hours, such a short time frame, and you still built something so marvelous. Be proud of it. Show it off. Like, present it as large as you view it to be, because it is, again, it's an impressive feat to create a project in such a short time frame, and you should really be proud of it. So next, let's talk a little bit about pacing. So again, earlier we talked about the 3 main stages of our hack, and we want to focus on the actual demo, on the hack, throughout our presentation. So in terms of our pacing, we will be spending most of our time doing the demonstration and less on the introduction and conclusions, right? So again, we have 3 main stages to our hack. That is the preface, the hack, and our feature thoughts / conclusion, right? And for presentations, we want to highlight the hack. We want to make it the main point of our presentation. We want to be able to show off what we built and show the actual product and the project, right? We don't want to focus too much on the preface or too much on the feature thoughts. As a judge as well, they want to see what you built, not what you were thinking of building. This is a hackathon, not a case competition. For example, let's say we have a 5-minute presentation, right? I will recommend spending maybe 30 seconds to a minute doing the intro and preface, introducing the problem, giving a little bit of background statistics, painting a picture of the world that your product resides in. Spend 3 to 4 minutes on the actual demonstration itself, go through all of the features, show off how it looks, show off how you built it, make it look as good as it can as like a prototype project. And then at the very end, spend 30 seconds to a minute on future thoughts and considerations, things that you would change, etc., etc. Basically the stuff that we talked about in the content slide, right? And of course, make sure you know your project and you're able to show it off fully. skim over the smaller and less important and less relevant features if you're cramming on time, and focus on the main selling points of your project, and practice and practice and practice your presentation. Of course, again, we're doing it virtual this year, so you can do as many takes as you want, but for in-person hackathons, practice makes perfect. So as long as you know what you're saying and you deliver it confidently and you're sure on your timing and pacing, though that will all help. And then again, practicing will just allow you to know how much time you can spend on each topic, and basically let you get a better grasp of your pacing. And lastly, again, this year we're running online, and so presenting online is a little different than presenting in person, right? So here are some tips for presenting to camera. So the main differences are there's more freedom of movement when you're presenting to camera, right? And so we can capitalize on this by being more exaggerate in our body language. Perhaps we could pace around a bit. We can make it a performance. We can act or do a kind of skit or anything. Be dramatic if you want. Not saying that you can't really do that at a hackathon, but because it's usually a smaller space, you have less time, there's so many other people around you, you can't really be loud, noisy, or exaggerate. On camera, you're absolutely free to be as boisterous as you want, right? And that is encouraged because on camera, just talking also becomes dull, right? Just talking and listening to a screen. Of course, you're watching this presentation right now. I'm sure you think after 16 minutes of me just talking to you, it gets a little bit boring. You're just reading off slides and listening to a guy talk, and that's not really interesting, right? So presenting to camera usually requires a personality that's a little bit more jubilant than normal. So try to be more bright, try to be more cheery and exaggerate with your tones. And for example, if I was just purely talking and presenting, this would become a lot more dull. And even though this works fine in real life, right? I think when you're presenting to camera, using a voice that's a little bit more exaggerate is a bit more exciting and a bit more enticing for the viewer. And lastly, for online presentations, you're able to edit. So if you're confident in editing videos, feel free to do a single take presentation and just run through all of it. So even if you mess up, you're sure that you can just fix it in post, right? You can just cut out the stumbles, throw in some flashy transitions, and make it look incredible, right? And again, you can also do multiple takes. So in that sense, you don't have to be like as sure about what you're going to say. If you mess up multiple times, it's fine. Because you're able to edit, you can go through and redo some of those takes or edit them out completely, right? And on that last point, if you do want to edit for this online hackathon, some free editing software includes DaVinci Resolve, Windows Movie Maker, and Audacity for audio. So DaVinci Resolve is free editing software, same with Movie Maker, and then Audacity is free sound mixing. And so that's all really useful for doing digital video production stuff. All right, and my last tip for all of you guys here today is to just be unique, right? You want to show off your project in any way that you want. You can make it interesting, you make it interactive, you can do anything. So again, you can perhaps do a skit, you could do a parody of some show, you could create this world that your product resides in and make it like enticing and engaging for your judges. And of course, absolutely the most important thing is to have fun. A hackathon is a learning experience, but it's also just a time to spend time with friends, to build something that you really love, and to just have fun. So if you want to create a super creative, super original, and like maybe a bit wild, a bit crazy of a presentation, go for it. We're all here to have fun and to learn, and absolutely just do whatever like your heart desires, right? Of course, make sure that it's appropriate for your hackathon and for your presentation, but have fun. That is that is one of the most important things to keep in mind when you're doing a hackathon. We're all here to have fun. And with that being said, I just want to say one last good luck with your demos. At the time of recording this, you have just under 4.5 hours left before submissions. So good luck with finishing up the last parts of your project. Cram, and get those submissions posted by 3 p.m. today. And good luck with recording and doing all of your demos and stuff. So again, just wanted to say thank you for coming to vhHacks 2021 again. If you've been on the server and been hacking, but you still haven't signed up on DevPost yet, sign up right now at vhHacks-2021.devpost.com, and happy hacking. Again, thank you so much for learning this with us at vhHacks 2021 this year, and hopefully we'll see you next year. Good luck, everybody.